Hello and welcome again to AirgunWeb.com, your home for honest, real-world airgun reviews, where we bring you the facts, not fluff. My name is Rick Utzler and I want to thank you for joining us today. As the weather warms up, it gives us the chance to look at yet another CO2 rifle. For this review, we will be testing the Gamo CO2 Extreme. I've had this in the shop for a little over about a year now. It has a few character marks here and there, but it can still hit the most important mark, and that is your intended target. The CO2 Extreme is a .22 caliber repeater, and it comes bundled with a Gamo 3-9x40 scope. Let's take a good close-up look at this rifle. Gamo CO2 Extreme is a break from tradition for Gamo. Their bread and butter is in building spring air guns, not CO2 guns. The CO2 Extreme does follow some of Gamo's more recent trends by using a lot of composite materials. The ambidextrous stock, forearm, barrel, and trigger are all made from high-grade composite. The receiver is cast metal from what I can tell. The gun is no lightweight and feels as heavy as my Remington 870 if that tells you anything. The CO2 Extreme is built to look like a modern shotgun and carries with it the same look and feel. The rifle has open sights. The rear sight is basically just a ramp, with the front sight being adjustable. There is a screw for easy vertical adjustment, but not for horizontal adjustment. You'll just have to wing it. Fortunately, Gamo included a 3-9x40 scope with this combo. Don't expect too much from the scope. The parallax is set to 35 yards, so you'll be fighting to get a good sight picture at 10 and 20. Gamo needs to remember to always include an AO scope, but I doubt they will. The gun operates on an 88-gram CO2 cartridge, which is housed in the forearm of the gun. The forearm comes off for easy installation of the CO2. The CO2 Extreme is a 10-shot repeater that works from a 10-shot cylinder on the right side of the gun. You pump the forearm like you would a pump shotgun to advance the cylinder. The trigger is a basic, non-adjustable plastic trigger. The term that comes to mind is spongy or springy. I'm not sure what Gamo was thinking with the trigger. It works fine as a field gun, but it makes it a challenge for bench shooting. Now let's talk about preparing, loading, and shooting the Gamo CO2 Extreme. Gamo took a real departure from their spring gun tradition with the CO2 Extreme. In essence, they've created a short-range CO2 hunting rifle that uses a pump action rather than a bolt to cycle the 10-shot cylinder. I can tell you from experience that it works, and works well, tracking down moving targets as they run branch to branch. To get the CO2 Extreme ready to shoot, you need to install the 88-gram CO2 cartridge. Now these can be hard to find and also expensive. But I may have a solution to both of those issues, which I'll address in an upcoming Take Aim episode. So you'll just have to stay tuned for that. The CO2 goes in under the barrel and inside the forearm cocking system. The forearm comes off to make it a little easier to screw in all the way. Looks like this. There's your CO2. Unlike other guns where you can clearly see or know if there's a pellet loaded in the breech, the Gamo CO2 locks the breech closed once the forearm is returned forward. The only way to remove the cylinder or pump the gun again is to fire the rifle. More so than other air guns I've tested, the CO2 Extreme can easily be a safety concern. So don't get sloppy or forget you're handling a powerful air gun. Once the CO2 is installed, you can return the forearm, which locks into place, and get ready to load the gun. The CO2 Extreme uses a 10-shot Rotary Magazine, which is cycled by pumping the forearm, and is probably why Gamo chose to give this rifle a good shotgun look and feel. There's a locking pin that needs to be pulled back when removing the cylinder. It's right here. The forearm needs to be in the back position. That's why I've got this all the way back and I'm sort of holding it. But it needs to be in the back position to remove the cylinder and load the gun. Now the forearm is spring-loaded, so be careful not to let the forearm return forward. If it does, you'll have to fire the gun in order to cock it again and load the cylinder. Let's go ahead and load this up with pellets. This cylinder holds 10 shots. The pellets load from the rear of the cylinder, just like this. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Once you've loaded the cylinder with pellets, return it to the breech, slide the cocking pin forward, return the forearm all the way forward, and you're ready to go. Just like that. To fire the rifle, you're going to set the safety to fire and squeeze the trigger. Now here's where it gets fun. You can just pump and fire multiple rounds while keeping your eye focused on the target. I know from personal experience this is a lot of fun out in the woods. Now the non-adjustable single stage trigger on the CO2 Extreme leaves a lot to be desired when shooting from the bench, but as a field gun it's just fine. Also, at first the pump action was a bit clunky and clumsy, but it's smoothed out with use. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's a lot of fun. Now, Gamo claims a max of 700 feet per second. How did our Gamo CO2 Extreme perform? Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and talk performance now. Finding the right pellet for the Gamo CO2 was actually pretty easy. It did well with many different pellets, but it really liked the Crossman Ultra Mags in the 500 count tin. They look a lot like Crossman Premiers, but cost a lot less. I personally can't tell the difference. Let's start with our standard test using the RWS Hobbies. Now they're 11.9 grain in a 22 caliber pellet. We had a high of 635 feet per second, a low of 606 feet per second, an average of 617 feet per second, an extreme spread of 29 feet per second, and a standard deviation of 7 feet per second. The maximum energy for the RWS Hobbies was 10.6 foot-pounds. I also tested the new Barracuda green pellets. These are lead-free, but not like other gimmick lead-free pellets. They're made to exacting standards and actually weigh in at about 12.65 grain, and while the spread was a little high, they did pretty well at 10 yards. We had a high of 616 feet per second, a low of 575 feet per second, an average of 594 feet per second, an extreme spread of 41 feet per second, again that's a little higher than I'd like to see, and a standard deviation of 15 feet per second. The maximum energy was 10.7 foot-pounds. Now let's go ahead and talk about our most accurate pellet, the Crossman Ultra Magnums. They're 14.3 grain and did very well at both 10 and 20 yards. Here are the performance numbers. We had a high of 557 feet per second, a low of 543 feet per second, an average of 548 feet per second, an extreme spread of 14 feet per second, and a standard deviation of only 5 feet per second. The maximum energy was 9.8 foot-pounds. One thing to note, Gamo's done something right with this gun as it sounds unusually quiet. It's almost too quiet for a big CO2 gun. It's deceptive how powerful, relatively speaking, this gun is because there's very little discernible noise. My dB meter measured 101 in my indoor tests, but the tone, the tone quality of the sound was at the extreme low register, and it comes across as very, very quiet. Shooting outside was great. My neighbor's dog didn't even come over to the fence and bark as it usually does when I'm shooting. So what kind of accuracy did we get? Well, indoors at 10 yards, groups were just over 1/4 inch. Outdoors at 20 yards, with a cross breeze, they opened up to about 0.4 inches center to center. Not bad for a CO2 rifle. Here's my scorecard on my Gamo CO2 Extreme. Here are the cons. It could use a better trigger for bench shooting, but that's not what it's designed for. I'd like to see more power, something close to that 700 feet per second with an average weight pellet. Lastly, the clunky feel of the pump action could use some improvement. Here are the pros for this gun. It's an accurate, relatively powerful, multi-shot 22 caliber CO2 air gun. I put this in the win column for Gamo. It seems to be built well, and the unique pump action is a real advantage when dealing with a moving target like squirrels. Inside 20 yards, it has enough energy to put down small game with one shot. And even better, it can do it with reasonable stealth. So let's put this all together in our final summary. The CO2 can't compete with the German-made Hammerly 850 as far as build quality goes. Because of this, I think the price of $300 is a little high. But it is very unique and does very well in the area that really matters, and that's accuracy. Because of this, the Gamo CO2 may be just what the doctor ordered for your backyard target shooting or small pest elimination needs. I'd like to take just a moment and thank the folks at Gamo for sending us this rifle, and also the folks at Pyramid Air for sponsoring this review. Before I started reviewing rifles, I bought all my supplies and most of my air guns from Pyramid Air. They won my loyalty with fair prices and excellent customer service. So when you're looking to buy your next air gun or fill your next supply order, give pyramidair.com a try and visit www.pyramidair.com or call them directly at 888-262-4867. And when you buy your next air gun from them, be sure to get the 10 for 10 service. The gun techs at Pyramid Air will unpack and test your air gun before it leaves the warehouse. This ensures you get a good working product every time. Remember, when you're looking for honest, real-world reviews, think Airgun Web, where we tell you the facts, not fluff. I'm Rick Utzler with airgunweb.com. Thanks again for watching.